What's up, fellas? In today's video, we're going to be talking about Bradley Beal, who we're going to be talking about a lot over the next couple of weeks as we approach the March 25th trade deadline, because he is, now that James Harden has been traded, Giannis Antetokounmpo has signed his new extension with the Milwaukee Bucks. He is the biggest chess piece left on the table here for potential contenders, for teams trying to elevate themselves into contender status, for the Wizards potentially trying to rebuild and make something of their future. Bradley Beal is the biggest name out there, and it's honestly not all that close. So in this video specifically, we're going to talk about why exactly he hasn't officially requested a trade. All the other signs are there, but for whatever reason, he seems unwilling to make known any kind of unwillingness to stay in Washington. It doesn't seem like to this point he has gotten frustrated to the point where he wants to leave, which is uncommon. This level of patience for a star player, a superstar player, is uncommon in the modern NBA. And we're going to talk about exactly why that's the case in today's video. But quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. What's up? My name is Tucker. I upload NBA content twice a day, every day on this channel. So if that's something you're looking for, this is a great place to be. If you enjoy the content, you can like the video, helps me out a ton, doesn't take very long at all. And you can check me out at various socials in a link tree down in the description below. With those things said, let's go ahead and talk about Bradley Beal. So the Wizards in general are just not a very good team right now. They're like 3 and something, and no matter what Bradley Beal does from an offensive standpoint, they can't win games. He scored 40 points again the other night, and it was the 10th consecutive game in which he scored 40 points and the Wizards lost. He hasn't scored 40 straight in 10 straight games, but in the last 10 games in which he has scored 40 points, the Wizards have lost every single game, which is obviously a concern, because when you are putting up that level of statistical production, you are the leading scorer in the entire league, and your team's only won 3 or 4 games, that can obviously be very frustrating, especially when this is a situation that Bradley Beal has been dealing with for a little while now. This is not something that has occurred within the first 15 games of this season. Washington has not been good for a little while, basically ever since John Wall went down with a serious injury. And it has been kind of this ongoing saga of what could potentially happen with Bradley Beal here in Washington again as we approach the trade deadline, which this season is March 25th. And as of right now, it seems like Beal is really committed to Washington. And the question is why? What exactly is keeping him there? Well, there's a couple of theories here. Maybe he just wants to be different. Like, everybody in the league now, short of Damian Lillard, requests trades and they want to be moved around. And we see guys move teams, whether it be free agency or trades, all the time. Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, Russ has been traded twice. James Harden, we just saw got traded for a huge number of picks. All the guys that moved in 2019, like, there are just so many players now swapping teams all the time. And maybe Bradley Beal looks at that situation and says, you know what, I want to differentiate myself from those guys. I don't want to be just another I requested a trade as soon as things got bad guy. And maybe that's part of his mindset here. And it's similar to what Damian Lillard has exhibited in the past, where he has said that he would rather spend his entire career as a Trailblazer and not win a title than jump around all these different teams in search of a title. And maybe Bradley Beal is of that same mindset, although obviously Washington is not nearly as good of a team as Portland has been for the last handful of years there of Damian Lillard's career. There's also the possibility that just overall he feels a connection to Washington, to being a Washington Wizard, and that's something he is not ready to move on from. And I think something that's a bit more likely here is that maybe he just, as unhappy as he might be with the pieces around him in Washington, the idea of giving up his role as one of the most high volume scorers in the entire league and sacrificing on a contender is not something that is particularly exciting to him. Going to a team and being, the second or maybe even the third guy on some rosters does not sound like something that is all that exciting to him. I think that is definitely a possibility when you get accustomed to being the guy all the time. The idea of having to sacrifice on a new team, or just playing on a new team in general and having to learn, how to play with new players, could be something that potentially is an issue for him. But I think the most likely reason that Bradley Beal has not requested a trade as of yet is because he would like to choose his new team in the summer of 2022. He signed that new extension a couple of years ago. It guarantees him a little bit more money. And then as he gets into the summer of 2022 is when he can really cash in on his huge deal as he has a player option in that summer of 2022. Right now, I think the mindset is, why would I request a trade? Why would I have another team give up assets when I can just pick my destination in 2022? And he would have, a choice of many different options in that particular summer if he did choose to opt out of his contract. And I think that's the most likely scenarios. He's looking at this from a bit more of a long-term perspective. I can continue to put up points, put up numbers. Maybe Washington is halfway decent, the second half of the year or next year, depending on what happens with Russ or some of the other younger guys in this roster. And he either requests a trade in 2022 because he just can't wait that long, or in the summer of 2022 he says, you know what? I'm done with Washington. I want to go sign my huge max deal with Miami or with Dallas or with whatever team. And that team not only will be committing to him monetarily, but also that team will not have to give up assets to acquire him. And in turn, the team should be significantly better because they have Beal in addition to guys and picks that they could have possibly traded to go and get Beal. And I think that, other than, the whole connection he feels to Washington and not wanting to change teams and things like that, I think that is probably the biggest factor in this right now, is just the ability to choose specifically what team he would like to go to in 2022. Now, I do think it's possible that maybe he does just see a bit of a brighter present and future there in Washington than most people seem to, whether it's because, maybe Russ suddenly becomes the Russ of old over the next couple of months and, really helps this Washington team, or maybe he really likes some of the younger guys in this roster. But again, I think that if you're a Wizards fan, his current unwillingness to be traded or to request a trade does not necessarily signal this huge commitment to Washington, because ultimately I don't think he's going to be around for, another 2 full seasons. I think he's got the rest of this year and, all of next year at most, and then he's gone. And in terms of, what Washington should do, I'm honestly not all that convinced that even if he doesn't request a trade, that you shouldn't be looking and having conversations with teams about what they could potentially or what they'd be willing to offer, because this is a highly, highly competitive season. And a team like Golden State would certainly be willing to part with, Wiggins and Wiseman and, potential future pick as well in exchange for Beal. Like there are significant trade assets out there and teams that have a huge number of assets, whether that be Oklahoma City, New Orleans, whatever the case may be. Houston, of course, has a huge number of picks. And I would not be passive in this if I was Washington, because, like I said, I think Beal's gone regardless. And of course, the minute he requests a trade publicly and everybody knows that he requested a trade, then the clock is running. So why not get a head start on this? Because I think at some point, again, whether it be free agency, otherwise, Bradley Beal's going to leave. And of course, you don't want to lose him for nothing in 2022. So ultimately, if I was Washington, and I'm sure they are, I would be preparing myself for the possibility of a Bradley Beal trade and what exactly it would look like, which is what we're going to be doing, I believe, tomorrow in the Bradley Beal NBA trade machine when we get more to like specific trade possibilities here for Beal. So ultimately, if you're a Wizards fan, I would not take this current stance by Bradley Beal as anything long-term about his commitment to the franchise. I think ultimately he will be leaving, and ultimately you'll be getting a huge haul in exchange for Bradley Beal, and then you got to kind of figure out what to do with the Russ thing as well. And that would be just a whole other fiasco, because of course you owe a pick to Houston, and how much value you're actually going to be able to get out of Russ, and are the other young guys even worth anything? So the long-term rebuild prospects of Washington are not ideal, but it does all begin with the Bradley Beal trade. And I don't know really if we're going to see one before the trade deadline this year. I think it's definitely worth looking at and worth examining, as he is the biggest name left out there. But I would imagine that if the Wizards are looking at this, unless Beal comes out and officially says, I don't want to be here anymore, I'd imagine they're going to keep him and they're going to try and figure it out here moving forward, which of course risks the possibility of injury or anything like that. But ultimately, when you have a player of Bradley Beal's caliber, typically those guys don't get moved unless the player specifically requests to be traded, especially not long after making a significant move to bring in Russell Westbrook, giving up a pick in order to do so. I believe they're going to play this as patiently as they can. Whether that's the right choice or not, I don't know. But until Beal said he doesn't want to be in Washington, he's probably going to be a Wizard. But at whatever point he says that he does not want to be there, I would expect a Beal trade. I would expect significant value going back to Washington. And of course, all the typical teams are teams to watch, whether it be Golden State or potentially Houston, Oklahoma City, New Orleans, whatever the case may be. Those are all going to be teams to watch. And we'll see. I mean, maybe the package is competitive with what Houston got for James Harden in terms of the picks and things like that, because Beal is younger. Of course, does not have an MVP to his name. Bradley Beal has been an incredible player for multiple years now and continues to show his incredible scoring value in Washington. And, the further into this process we get, I think the more and more details we're going to get about exactly what the plan is there in Washington for Bradley Beal. But that's going to be the end of today's video. That's why I don't think that Beal has requested a trade as of yet. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say down in the comment section below in terms of why you think Beal has not officially said that he wants out of Washington. As I said in the beginning of the video, my name is Tucker. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did and you're looking for consistent NBA content, this is a great place to be. You can subscribe down below, you can like the videos, and you can check me out at various socials in that link tree in the description below. With all those things said, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.